Please stand clear of the doors. Por favor, manténganse alejado de las puertas.
Hi there, everybody, and welcome back to Monorail Monday, the show where we talk about different stories and history and behind-the-scenes information when I was working at Monorail and Walt Disney World many moons ago, and how things were like, what happened. So if you haven't watched any previous Monorail Monday episodes, there are playlists on the channel for each season with a lot of different stories, a lot of different background stuff, so be sure to check the past episodes out as well. So today we're going to be doing episode number 37, pretty exciting, in the 6th season of Monorail Monday. A lot of people have been asking for different things. One thing somebody wanted me to talk about was a little bit, or multiple people have asked to talk a little bit about Monorail Shop, what we called Shop. Some people might refer to it as the barn, the roundhouse. When I was there, we always called it Monorail Shop, other than people's random nicknames for it. But all radio conversation basically said we're going to or from Monorail Shop. That was the official nomenclature on the radio. Monorail Shop is basically a spot where we can park 10 trains from the monorail system and do maintenance on them. Most of the time you may have heard that monorails are left out on the system, the Beamway. There may be a monorail left at the Magic Kingdom, or 2 trains may be left at the Magic Kingdom. Parked overnight, you usually have a train parked at the Contemporary. You may have a train parked at the Polynesian or the Grand Floridian. Not every single night, but typically they would park trains at those areas. And then you would have, of course, the 2 at the Magic Kingdom. Usually also there might be a train sitting on the Epcot line at the Transportation and Ticket Center. So a lot of the times you had trains out. You're not taking all the trains back there every single night, but they would rotate them, and they tried not to leave trains out on the system multiple nights in a row. They'd rotate the trains that would come back, so that regular maintenance or deeper maintenance could be done on the trains. So they generally have a plan earlier in the evening, and they're going to set up the trains where they need to be at the end of the night. If there's a train at the Epcot beam and that needs to go to Shop, it either could be transferred to the main line around the lagoon or that Beamway earlier in the evening, or it might get transferred late in the evening, and they'll switch the train from one track from the Epcot beam over to the Transportation and Ticket Center, and then swing that around and the switch, take it to the switch, through the switch to Monorail Shop. As many of you know, there is a switch a little bit towards the Contemporary in front of the Magic Kingdom, and that's where the switch is. It's just a static metal piece of beam that just slides back and forth between the Lagoon Hotel Resort beam and the Express beam, and there's a little block in the middle where the beams can sort of connect in between, and you go very slow through those. It's just a couple miles an hour. If that is connected, you're just traveling very slow, just a few miles an hour through there to avoid damaging the train, and it'll make the transition angling between the 2 beams. And then you've got the 2 beamways, and they'll just slide back to connect to their regular beam tracks. That is a very specific process that Monorail Central and Monorail Shop, the maintenance guys, will set up. Position the trains to a certain pylon. All the trains will be held. The switch is made. Train is instructed to proceed through the switch, and then either proceed on straight to the Magic Kingdom Center, or if not, then they'll switch cabs in the Magic Kingdom if it's going to the Resort beam. It kind of depends on which way you're going, which beam you're switching to. They generally prefer everybody to be going through there forward, so you can see where you are, see when you're hitting the beamway and things like that. So as you go the spur and take that back to Shop, and that's the beamway that goes past Space Mountain and behind the park, And if you've ever driven back that way, that is a long curving track that leads back to a whole bunch more switches. So typically if you go off the beam, you are cleared and you circle that arcing turn towards Monorail shop, and there are a couple of hold points along the way that they'll clear you to the next spot. You wait there, then they're going to go ahead and switch the beamways to whatever beam you're supposed to park in a Monorail shop. They always have specific, they know where they want to park the trains, they have a specific place they want to send you to. So it's a step-by-step process of going from one beam, going through the spur, hold point, going through another switch. Usually, if you are going through multiple switches, they have the later switches set up to which side of Monorail shop you want to go to. There's 2 sides, each holding 5 beamways, and you're going to have a switch for that to switch between either side of those. And you've got all these other switches. So those are going to be the way that they take you back. They're all the same basic general principle as the one on the main line. So they can make any of those switches. And when you get to the 2 different branches, then there's switches between all of those. So the different 5 beamways in the back at Monorail shop. So there's a bunch of switches that you're going to kind of go through, either coming or going. Obviously, if you're leaving shop, everything's going to be lined up pretty much from the get-go. But they will clear you to certain points and then give you clearance to continue. If you did, I'm sure somebody out there can say, well, what happens if you start going through a switch that's not connected? No power. Basically, you can't do that. They're going to have a switch lined up. If they did line a switch up improperly, you're going to lose power. The entire beamway is not going to be connected. You'd lose power. You wouldn't be able to sail off the end. Unless there was some kind of crazy USB plug and everything was overridden. But no, I'm just kidding. You basically have power to move. If you don't have power to the beamway, you don't go anywhere. As you approach shop and you're coming in there, of course, you're going through these switches. You're going very slow through the switches, going slow as you're entering shop. And if you've watched any of previous Monorail Monday, you might remember the one where we talked about the little tennis ball at the end of the beamway, and you just creep up to that and let that just tap the windshield. I know people do that in their garage sometimes to let them know exactly, so you know where you are even though you can't see over the very nose of the car or the monorail train in this example. So they had a little tennis ball hanging from the ceiling, and you just pull up until you tap that tennis ball, and that lets you know you're in good spot. Hit the pull the power to 0, brakes, shut down the train, you're good. And then there's a ladder that you climb up and down to get to the cab, because it's elevated a decent ways off the floor. You can probably see it in a picture here that hopefully I've remembered to insert. But they are elevated a little bit, and that basically gives maintenance the opportunity to look at the skirts of the train, the section of the train that hugs the beamway, where all the wheels and tires and axles and all that kind of thing is. And then the motors are up in between the cars, so very often they will work on the motors. If the train comes back to shop, there could be all sorts of reasons it's coming back. It could be just a light maintenance overview and just kind of make sure everything on the train's running properly, make sure no parts are loose and things like that. It could be something very basic, just periodic maintenance to ensure that everything's running smoothly. Could be to fix a specific problem. This particular train has been having, say, a motor overspeed would be a typical problem. And maybe this problem does not remove the train from the beamway. Maybe it's okay, it's still in service during the day, something we want to keep an eye on, but it doesn't preclude the train from operating. That they might bring that back to fix it. It may be a train that was on the verge of getting towed off at the end of the night. It could be something, If it's a train that's had a problem or has been towed during the day, then you'll see that train coming back earlier instead of the end of the night. If a train does get towed, they do have a work tractor back there. They also now, I believe, have a work tractor stowed over in the Epcot beam, just in case things are going wrong. A tow tractor couldn't get out there. Back in my day, in the late 80s, early 90s, and even before that, there basically was a work tractor and shop. They could come out and tow a train, but there wasn't one stashed over on the Epcot line. If there was a problem, you had to position all the other trains to be able to move the tractor to get out to the Epcot beam, and that could take a while. We didn't have trains get stuck all the time like, you know, these days. You've seen surely multiple rescues, or we've been stuck on the train for hours, you know, halfway to Epcot or something like that. That really didn't happen it didn't happen that I recall anytime that people were out there forever. If a train gets stuck anywhere, the Monorail tow tractor will take it back. Now in the back shop, they've got all sorts of controls to be able to move the switches. They have basically like a map of the system, can see what's getting power, what's not getting power, what kind of what position the switches are in. They can look at that, they can confirm all that sort of thing. They have platforms to work on the train. It's basically like a big giant warehouse, and from the ground or either up in the air, you can climb up the steps in the train. They can work on things in the cab, on things in any particular car. Any of the motors, the tires can be replaced, all that sort of thing. So they are fully capable of doing any kind of work back there, and like I said, it could be anything from just electronics work on the trains, the digital kind of stuff, or computer related software kind of things, to more mechanical things, brake shoes, power collectors, which basically hang from the train, and they're little square pads that collect power off of the rail that you see, the metal rail running along the beamway. That's where the power is coming from. So they can fix any of that stuff, and that a lot of that stuff's pretty common. It's pretty common. They replace a brake shoe, a power collector, may be able to do some work on the motors, things like that. So there's a lot of that kind of stuff that goes on back there. It does sit right on top of the monorail trains, or I'm sorry, the Disney Railroad. The railroad trains are directly below. It's like the first floor is the regular railroad trains. The second floor is the monorails. No, they're not really. I mean, it's the same building, but it's not like people are interacting. Oh, I'm going to fix a steam train. Oh, as soon as you're done with that, go up to the monorail. Completely different departments stacked on top of each other, but completely different maintenance, different departments. It's a whole different ball of wax from the old steam trains and the monorails. Completely separate. Of course, I've talked about maintenance over at Epcot, that there was a little cubby hole where we sometimes fixed burritos, depending on the maintenance guy that was there. There usually was a maintenance guy pretty often there, in case there was something that could be fixed with some smaller tweaks, without having to take a train off the beamway, or if you just wanted to look at something before it went all the way back to Transportation and Ticket Center. So there's a little maintenance guy there usually. You usually didn't have anybody over at the Magic Kingdom. Somebody could get over there pretty quickly, and they would probably take the van or something from either shop or the Transportation and Ticket Center. Often there was a maintenance guy at the Transportation Center in that general area. So that's just a little bit of Monorail shop. I wish I could give you a lot more specifics, but there wasn't a whole lot going on other than maintenance doing things, and there was us going in and out of there. It wasn't someplace we necessarily hung out a lot. You would take a train in or out. In the mornings, we do take a lot of those trains out. In the evenings, you're taking a lot of trains back. A van would come back and pick you up, take you back to the Transportation and Ticket Center. In the morning, they would take the van. They would drop drivers off at the Contemporary, at the Polynesian, at Magic Kingdom to take the trains out, and a couple people get dropped off at Monorail shop to bring out the monorails for the morning morning setup. And usually the resort trains would be up and running, and they would get them with their checklists and cycling, and the Magic Kingdom loop would come up a little bit after that, and that would include trains being brought on to the main line from Monorail Shop. So hopefully that answers some questions, and hopefully you learned a little bit more about how the monorail system works. These things change over time as they make some different adaptations, but I'm pretty sure most of that is pretty much how things run these days too. There isn't a lot of differences in how Monorail Shop's going to operate and send trains out or bring them back. So hope you enjoyed that. We'll be back next week with another Monorail Monday. I'm planning to have a special guest on next week, another monorail pilot, to tell you some stories and tell you some experiences, somebody I worked with back in the time. So hopefully that'll be up next week, and we'll have a little bit of fun doing some of that. So thanks for joining us. Hope you enjoyed it. Be sure to like, subscribe, comment, tell your friends, and remember, have a good time all the time.